Everybody. We are going to talk today about Aaron Bushnell, the U.S. soldier who committed suicide in an apparent act of activism earlier this week to protest the alleged genocide being committed in Gaza right now. Um, and we'll just talk a little bit about who he is and just how principled his activism really is, in my opinion. Um, he was an active member of the U.S. Army, and he wrote before he lit himself up outside the Israeli embassy. Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery, or the Jim Crow South, or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now. So essentially, he's saying that if we don't protest this right now, we're kind of imagine what we'd be doing in 100 years ago in Jim Crow South or South African apartheid. What would you do? Essentially, what you're standing by and doing nothing. So he's essentially arguing that you have the, or we have, I have the moral obligation to speak out on what is going on in my name. Why? What's going on in his name? Because he's an active member of the United States Air Force. And so he says he doesn't want to be complicit in genocide because what's going on is that the U.S. is sending Israel a lot of weapons, and a lot of those weapons right now are being used in Gaza. So he's saying that the U.S. is complicit in what's going on right now. And he says um, that whatever his extreme act of protest is, it's nothing compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine or Gaza at the hands of their colonizers. Not extreme at all. So he's saying that, he's pointing to whatever extreme experiences are going on in Gaza right now. I think the tally, everybody, or what's being reported right now in Gaza is that 30,000 people have been killed so far. A lot of people mistakenly uh, point to the fact that, oh, there's 30,000 people, so it must mean there's 30,000 civilians being killed. Well, the fact of the matter is that's not true. According to Hamas, they're about Hamas came out with about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, even maybe a little bit earlier. That 6,000 people, 6,000 or 7,000 um, terrorists have been killed. 6,000 of their own fighters. The IDF estimates at 13,000 right now. So either way, it's not 30,000 civilians that have been killed. There's thousands of Hamas fighters have been killed in what's going on in Gaza. So it's completely out of proportion what people say when 30,000 civilians have been killed. It's not true. Um, so he sets himself up on fire and then he eventually dies. But let's look a little bit about the ideology surrounding who Aaron Bushnell is. Well, if we see, for example, he has socialist friends, um, and one of his socialist friends said um, he was outraged by what was going on. He knows that he has privilege as a white man and a member of the military. Um, so he associated himself with socialist circles, and also he has apparently an anarchist past. Um, but It says Bushnell was speaking with one of his friends about what sacrifices were needed of them to be effective as anarchists. So we see, he surrounded himself with anarchist and socialist friends. Now, this is kind of interesting because if you are really an anarchist or you're a socialist, what the hell are you doing in the U.S. military? What the hell are you doing in the U.S. military? The the socialists and anarchists, the real principled ones, uh, are going to always accuse the United States military of being imperialist colonizers. That's what they. So if you are really a principled anarchist or socialist, anarchist on the left, you should have no business being in the U.S. military. You should have absolutely no business whatsoever being in the U.S. military. So he this is where I come in and really highly are really critical about this, because it's one thing to really believe that what's going on in Gaza is genocide, and that you have to take a stand. You have to take a stand for it. But I just want to put things in perspective right now. We talk about U.S. complicity, alleged U.S. complicity in genocide. What's going on in Gaza? Well, this is also interesting because since 2015, this has been going on way since before October 7th of last year. Well, the U.S. has been complicit in giving weaponry to Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi military has been fighting off the Houthis in Yemen for 7 years. And some people have accused the Saudis of genocide there. But it's interesting because what's the tally of people who have been killed in Yemen? Well, we're going to look. 377,000 people have been killed. Hmm. By the end of 2021. This is interesting because this was 2 years before, almost 2 years before October 7th and the IDF's current military operation in Gaza. So 377,000 people in Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world, were killed. Um, but apparently that was not enough. That was not the time for Aaron Bushnell to take a stand. To take a stand. Where was Aaron Bushnell outside the Saudi embassy? I don't recall. I don't recall him burning. I don't recall him wanting to burn himself there, or anybody else for that matter. It's just very interesting, uh, the utter lack of principle here. Um, well, if he's informed, I will say this: if he's truly informed, it doesn't. I don't know if he how informed he is about Yemen. Actually, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt to assume that he really had no idea that there was a war in Yemen that cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe he didn't know. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people will assume that this is an act of anti-Semitism. It's ridiculous. I don't want to make a make a blanket accusation like that. I mean, you need something to you need like proof to back yourself up. Allegedly, there was a social media post that was anti-Semitic that has not, that he posted in the past. I haven't been able to verify that yet. But I guess what I'm saying here is that there's a lot of lack of principle here, not just by Aaron Bushnell, but like a lot of people on the left. Uh, Granted, there were some people on the left who have spoken out about, um, you know, U.S. or the U.S. role in the war in Yemen, which, by the way, has been winding down recently. The Saudis are not really fighting the Houthis that much anymore at all. But nonetheless, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were killed over those years. So it's just interesting to put things in perspective. 30,000 people dying in Gaza versus 377,000 people being killed here. And also, again, I'm just saying, if you're really a truly principled socialist, you have no business, or anarchist, you have no business being in the U.S. military. Your time for moral standing was well before the IDF launched its current military operation in Gaza. Well before. So, I think that I think maybe he just did not have in my opinion, a full grasp of where he stood in terms of principle. Um, so I think that this is a sign that very often, even if you're in the more active circles, the more activist circles, you're often not standing on principle, and you don't even know it. So in my opinion, I'm just going to give Aaron Bushnell the benefit of the doubt, that he just was not fully educated on the whole perspective of what's going on in the world. His standing, or just what it means to be a socialist or an anarchist. You could be a socialist, fine. You have, but be principled about it. Don't join the U.S. military. You know, if you think if you're against imperialism because you're a socialist, don't join the U.S. military. Um, I personally will not make a blanket statement that the U.S. military is an active imperialist military force, but it's very clear that in socialist circles they all view the U.S. military this way. So, I find it interesting that nobody. I think because in the heat of the moment, because the left and the socialists are so uh, angered by Israel's operations in Gaza, they can't even focus on the inconsistency that exists, or the lack of standing, the lack of Aaron Bushnell should have stood up much earlier, before this happened. So um, this puts things in perspective. Um, I don't think he really had my the way I see things. He probably apparently, if he knew about the 377,000 people in Yemen, that was not the moment for him to apparently, if he did know about it, that was not the moment for him to take a stand. What really was the moment was 1/10 of that killing, and even then, much fewer civilians, actual civilians being killed. So um, that just puts things into perspective, and it gives you the idea about the lack of principle right now, with the anti-Israel left in the world right now, and they're just infuriated by Israel, and they don't have the ability, in my opinion, to really see the whole panoramic view about everything that's been going on in the Middle East and the world over the last 10 and 15 years.